Oh, what did they have to worry about in those days? I tell you what, I'm very pleased to say that in the virtual studio, I have Jiten Chavda of Expat Finance, myself, Gareth of Many Purple Hats. And today we're going to be talking about topics that appertain to expats, specifically if you're based in Sweden, although there may be amusing parts in this that anyone can take away from. But Jiten, now, what were we talking about last week, just so we can feed into this week nice and easily?
It was, again, we were discussing pensions, but pension is such a big topic that you can't really go through all the different elements of a pension in a very short period of time. So, right. The idea was to split it into two sections and talk this week about the other parts of pensions. But I'm probably going to recap on some of the things that we discussed last week as well.
Yeah, so, I think it can bear repeating, absolutely. And I believe that you can also talk about different types of pensions as well. So I learned to live at the feet of the master and learn from you today.
Now, most people have generally 4 different elements of a pension that are based in Sweden. Okay, you'll have your Swedish state pension, you'll have your Swedish private pension, which might be a company pension or a personal one. It depends on what your working circumstances are. Then most people that have moved over from the UK will probably have a UK state pension. That will be your national insurance contributions. And they'll probably have some form of either a company pension scheme or a personal pension scheme from the UK.
Right.
Now, when you think about it, that's 4 different elements, and forgetting, if you worked in other countries as well, so you have pensions from other countries as well. So right. What you really need to do is, before it's too late, you need to start looking at what you can do with your pensions and actually make sure that they're working in the right way for you and your circumstances. Because if you're closer to retirement, what you need to do with your pension will be slightly different to somebody that's got 30 years to go before retirement.
Yeah, it makes sense, actually. It does.
But the thing is, as I said in the last talk that we had, a lot of people don't realize pension is one of their second biggest assets they have, but they don't take care of it. They just leave it and they think hopefully that'll take care of it. But no, you need to really look into it. Several different reasons for that. The UK government has, the pension companies in the UK have over £4 billion of unclaimed pensions. That's because people have small pension pots that they're forgotten about. They worked in a company for a year, they had a pension, they moved, they can't remember, they don't have any paperwork for it or anything. Right. So they forget all these, and these are the types of things you must do when you're younger, because if you try to do it as you get close to retirement, and that pension was 20 years ago, you're going to have a hard time trying to locate it. At least it's a little bit easier here. Right. So let's talk about, firstly, the UK side of the pension schemes. We have a state pension in the UK. Okay, the state pension is eligible for anybody that's actually paid national insurance contribution for at least 10 years. What you have to do to get the maximum state pension is carry on paying for 35 years. Now, a lot of people never get round to completing 35 years, believe it or not, because they've got breaks in their lives, they've travelled and lived in different countries and so forth. But what you can do in the UK is you can actually backtrack and pay national insurance contribution for years you've missed. Now, if people want to know more about that, it's worth talking to me about it, because people don't realise just by adding 1 extra year, you're going to get at least £300 a month, £300 a year more when you get to retirement. And that's every year at retirement.
Really?
So it's really, yes. So what the government's doing is you pay a small amount now, but you're going to get a larger amount at retirement because they want the money now. So if you're actually based in Sweden and you haven't looked at your national insurance contributions, it's really worthwhile checking the HMRC website and making sure that you can actually utilize all the years that you've missed and any future years that you're based here, so you can get to the maximum. So it is important to review your national insurance contributions. Now, there's a few rule changes happening in August of this year, so bear this in mind. From August of this year, it's going to change where you can only go back 6 years. So if you've got 6 missing years, you can only go back to the past 6 years. Before August of this year, you can actually go back up to 2000 and something. So bear that in mind. So if you've got years that are missed, look into it now. Yes, HMRC are going to be busy. We know that. There's issues with them at the moment, and they're not really, they've overpaid on pensions and things like that. So be careful. They're going to be busy. So be patient with them. The second area is if you've got UK pensions, it's important to actually group all your pensions into one pot. Okay. If you've got personal pensions, which are what we call defined contribution pensions, so you paid money into it, at the end of the term, whatever the actual value of your fund is worth is what you'll get back at retirement.
Okay.
Or contributions. Okay.
So really, you need to take yourself in stock now rather than waiting till closer to the time.
Definitely, because if you've got a couple of few small pots in the UK with pensions here, there, and everywhere, you're paying fees for all those. Group them all together into one pot, and then at least you're reducing your fees, and you can manage that pot much easier.
No, I know.
Then,
my pension, I was approached a couple of years ago. Is it to pull everything together into one pot? And it did seem like a good idea then. There's still a lot of people, for instance, in Sweden, who haven't done that.
Yes, there are plenty of people, because it's something they'll leave for later on. And it's most important. As long as we group it together, then we can decide what to do with the pension. Now, what we do with the pension will depend on what your long-term plans are.
Right.
Okay. Now, depending also how big the portfolio of investment you've actually got will depend on what we do with that pension. That would be a personal question to everybody. Would have a different outcome on that. Some pensions will leave there, some pensions we move, some pensions we bring to Sweden. There's lots of different options we have. So we've got the UK side of the pension side of things. So two, the personal one and the private one. Now, if you have a final salary pension from the UK, if you work for the government or you worked as a teacher or a fireman, any of these types of organisations, you're not going to be in a position to be able to move those pensions. You'll get advisors telling you, yeah, of course you can move your pension around. You can in very, very specific circumstances, i.e. ill health. Then there's options we've got available to you. But if you're a fairly healthy person, you will not be able to move that pension from where it is at the moment. And actually, it's not advisable to move it, because that is a guaranteed pension. They could tell you as of today what you're going to get 30 years from now. So you have guaranteed pensions options.
Right, yes, I get it now. Sorry, I hadn't thought of it that way.
So with those, you don't want to, because if you move it somewhere else, it's not guaranteed. It's just based on how the funds are performed.
Oh.
Okay. So then we've got the Swedish side of things. Okay, in Sweden we have exactly a similar type, but if we look at the state pension doesn't have anything to do with the number of years you've worked. Okay, right. Well, it does to a point. You have to have a minimum of 3 years in Sweden paying tax to get the minimum state pension from Sweden.
Oh wow.
What that means is that when you're paying tax in Sweden, 18.5% of what you're paying goes towards your state pension. And then the state take care of 16% of that. You can't do anything with that 16%. And whatever that is worth at retirement is what you'll get as a pension.
Oh.
So it's based on the growth of the performance of the investment. Everybody can get a minimum, by the way, but generally most people are above the minimum.
Right.
Now,
So you can no carry on, please.
I said to you, out of the 18.5%, 16% the government take. You have no control over. The other 2.5%, believe it or not, you can actually invest that into different types of funds. Most people don't even pick those funds, and it goes into default funds. What my recommendation would be, that 2.5%, if you've now got 20, 30 years to go to retirement, pick a portfolio of funds, a couple of funds which are aggressive, because only 2.5%. And because it has a long period,
you might as well go for your life, I suppose.
Exactly it. Then the fourth and final area, as far as pensions are concerned, is private pensions in Sweden. Again, the best advice I can give people, if they've got a company pension, is to sit down with the company's pension advisor at least once a year to review your pension, to making sure it's heading in the right direction, making sure the funds are performing well enough, because the markets change. And as markets change, your fund portfolio needs to change as well. So it is important to get an advisor to help you to do that. If you don't have one, there are ways and means of, I can help people depending on where the pensions actually are to decide on where to actually invest the money. So there's different options that people have. So they're the main things as far as pensions. Obviously, pensions is bespoke to each individual. We know that. So it is important to talk to somebody, say, okay, these are my current circumstances. This is what I'm trying to achieve. How do I go about achieving it? And that's really the basics of pensions.
Wow. But so we've got 4 different types.
There's lots more than 4 different types. But generally, people that are expats in Sweden that come from the UK will probably have 4 different types of pensions.
Okay.
That's generally speaking.
Okay. And it does sound a little worrying that there's sort of deadline that you need to
For
raise
the
up.
national insurance, yeah. For the
But I
national
suppose, if I can be blunt about it, if you're working with someone like yourself, then it's not so much of a worry because you've already taken that into account.
It's guiding people through the process of doing it. Most people have to do these themselves. I can't, as an advisor, go out and help people with, go and take care of people's national insurance. They have to do it themselves, but I can guide them to that process.
Okay.
And
is there something they can be doing up front? I mean, let's say there's somebody new to working with you. Is there a certain amount of preparation they can do to make sure that they're going to get the best out of it?
I think there is. The best I can help people, the more information I can get the better I can help people. So the first thing I would suggest is look at the years you worked in the UK or any other countries and find out if there was a company pension associated with that. Now, in the UK, most companies had company pension schemes available to you. So that's the first thing. Make a list of those companies. Then you contact those companies and get a summary of what you have there. Okay, because a lot of it can be done online now anyway. So you have to register online with these relevant companies as well. Now, if you can't find any information about it, you can either contact me, or what you can do is go to the HMRC website, and there's a lost pensions section there. So you can input the company you work for, and from that, you might be able to find out the telephone number or the company that's actually managing your pension. Then you have to contact that company and give them your name, national insurance number, and then they will go through their due diligence, and they will give the information about your pension.
Yeah,
so it's a process.
I suspect it's critical to find out that information sooner rather than later, because some of these pension companies get sold to others, and then all the bits and pieces change their contact numbers, and then you end up losing it entirely. I know I've been through that myself, actually.
Exactly. So it is, it's making a list of what you actually have on pen and paper, believe it or not, because everybody puts everything on a computer, and then just saying, okay, I'm going to get that information. Once you've got that information, your Swedish pension, you can go on to, in Sweden, you've got a site called minpension.sc. You can log in through your bank ID, and through your bank ID, you can find out all your pension information. Now, if you need assistance with that, the best thing to do is, get information, send that across, and we can have a chat about it.
Right. So to me, it sounds like people need to think about taking action sooner rather than later. They should try and gather up, as in their, at least on paper, as many different places where they've got money either sitting around doing nothing, or money in investments or in pensions. And then once they've got that, you'll be able to make a judgment call and help advise them more accurately. Is that fair?
That's exactly the way we're going to do it.
All right.
It's just people to be aware of it. People do leave pensions a little bit too late.
All right. So what I was going to say is, if you wouldn't mind summarizing today's thing, and then we'll just round it up and finish off for today.
The people that worked in the UK, whether they're actually British or not, it doesn't really matter. The first thing we need to do is just check the national insurance contributions. Go to the HMRC website and check your national insurance contributions. If you've got UK pensions, group them all together, at least in one pot, and then we can actually make a decision on what you want to do, depending on what your long-term plans are going to be. In Sweden, you have a state pension. Make sure you've got the 3 years, which most people probably will have. From the tax that you're actually paying, 18.5% goes towards your state pension. 16% you have no control over that. 2.5% you have control over that. If you've got a long term to go to retirement, because most people, if you don't actually allocate anything, it goes into what they call a default fund. Because it's in a default, move it away from a default fund. Go to something a bit more aggressive if you've got long way to go to retirement. And the fourth and final area was, if you've got pensions in Sweden, make sure you get them reviewed on a regular basis. Really important, get them reviewed on a regular basis.
And to all of you watching, thank you so much for doing so. We do appreciate it. But if you want to get in, if you notice, I've put a cheeky QR code at the top there. If you scan that, that will get you straight through, so you can actually start your conversation with Jiten. And I certainly recommend that if you're an expat, and specifically if you're the expat in Sweden, perhaps a 10-minute initial conversation over a cup of coffee will do the world of good. And to everybody else who just popped on, watch out. We're doing a whole series of these. The last one was particularly good, so I do recommend you go and look back. And watch out, because we'll be doing these weekly here on in. So until next time, thank you so much, Jiten.
Thank you. You're welcome. Next time, I'll just remind you, next time we're going to be talking about people that have got investments left in the UK, but they're based here.
Oh gosh, right, yeah.
What the tax
I suspect that will be a good number of you. Sounds like a thing that happens quite frequently. All right, so next time, until next time, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and remember, brighter days ahead. Until then, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.